Feingold, the former chairperson of Republicans Abroad Asia, joins us now live from Taipei. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, first off, I want to get your thoughts on Trump not getting enough support from Republicans in Congress about his claim on voter fraud. And that's a claim being made by the president's sons, Don Jr. and Eric.
Well, members of Congress have to consider their own political futures as well. So if the president is going to lose the election, they're going to have to balance their own future with the popularity that President Trump will continue to have even as a former president. So obviously, they're struggling with that and trying to strike the right balance. They don't want to alienate President Trump's supporters, which is still nearly half the electorate. But they also have to be careful about not saying things that are inconsistent with the facts within the voting tabulation process or within the respective state laws. So clearly, these Republican members of Congress are struggling with what kind of message they want to publicly say.
Let's take a look forward for a second here. If Trump wins, and that is still possible, how can he possibly fix the damage that he's caused to the reputation of the Republican Party?
Well, I think people in the United States who do support the Republican Party, whether it's voters or members of Congress, would say that his policies do have an enormous amount of support. Look, if he does lose, he's going to lose the election by a very small amount from an electoral college perspective. Even if Biden received more votes than Obama did, Trump received more votes than he did 4 years ago. So the question of whether or not he did damage to the Republican Party might be premature. What is clear, though, and goes to your point, is that the policies of the Republican Party have the support of a large portion of the electorate, but it becomes increasingly difficult for people who maybe were in the middle or were Democrats to vote for the Republican Party. So both sides are really moving into their respective camps, and it's possible that voters who are in the middle, moderate voters, going forward, more of them might side with the Democrats. But again, that remains to be seen. But it's clear that a large portion of the electorate is still very enthusiastic about the policies of the Trump administration.
Right, but some of these policies have caused a lot of division in the United States. And what about fixing the damage with the U.S. public? What should his strategy be to bringing Americans back together? Because we've been witnessing a very divisive America in recent time.
There's no doubt about it. And we see that with the possibility of protests by supporters of Biden or supporters of Trump. America is clearly divided. The partisanship, some will say it's a culture war, very, very strong differences of opinion across a very wide and increasing list of policy issues. But if President Trump were to change what looks like a loss as of now into a victory, look, we know his style. And in a second administration, if he were to turn this into a victory, it's probably safer to assume that he would pursue the same governing style that he did in his first administration, because he would also take the view that I got reelected based on my style and my policy. So there wouldn't be a compelling need to change it. It's almost more a tough question for Biden should he win, because if Biden wins, he'll face enormous pressure from the progressive side of the Democratic Party to pursue policies that they want. But Biden's natural inclination would be to govern as a more moderate president. But Republican voters or members of Congress, no matter what Biden does, are going to look at Biden as too close to the progressives.
Right. We know this isn't going to happen. But do you think Donald Trump should concede?
Well, if the electoral college result is proven to be honest, there's a lack of fraud, and that remains to be seen. The Republicans are going to try and prove that there was fraud. Well, whether they win or not, whether the Trump campaign could win these lawsuits, doesn't look likely now. But if they have evidence, they could win. But Trump will, at some point, leave the White House. Whether or not he actually makes this concession speech is probably not the key point.
All right, Ross Feingold, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It's always a pleasure to have you.